Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to Press for Truth. I'm your host, Dan Dix, and today we are joined in studio by Bev Collins. Thank you so much for joining us here today, live in studio.
Well, thanks for having me, Dan.
Now, you have been involved in activism for many, many years. I mean, going back as far as the early 90s, exposing CFR and Trilateral Commission, being in the game a long time. And I want to talk about, you're going to be running under the 9/11 Truth banner in politics, which is fantastic. But for some of the people who may not be familiar with your work, just start us off by telling us a little bit about how you got involved in activism, which eventually led to getting into politics.
Okay. Back in the late 80s, I was actually a businesswoman in Ottawa. I owned my own scientific vacuum semiconductor company. So I sold to the federal government, which happened to be the Mulroney government at the time. And I realized, dealing with the government, that there was a lot of corruption happening. So I ended up closing my company down, moving out to Nelson, BC, and writing a book called The Deals That Were Made, which was about Mulroney and his henchmen and how they made corporate deals behind the scenes and stuff like that. And I started bringing speakers out west from Ottawa because I knew right away people didn't know what was going on in Ottawa. So I brought out Shelley and Clark to talk about the rigging of the free trade agreement, and Glenn Keeley at the time, who was also exposing a lot of the Mulroney corruption. And just after that, Mel Hertig wrote his first book, Betrayal of Canada. So I brought Mel out as well. And that's when he was starting up the National Party, and I became one of his first candidates for the National Party for 1993.
So you have been bringing issues of truthful issues to the West Coast from Ottawa for quite some time, for 20 years now. How does 9/11 Truth come into the picture?
Well, when 9/11 happened, I knew something was wrong that day because I knew NORAD, and there was just no way the most defensed country in the world would allow something like that to happen. So I didn't feel right, but I also felt very bad for what was happening in America. And but I followed up when the Jersey Girls did their story. And it touched me so much, I thought, wait a minute, there's got to be something to this. And especially when they wanted to find out what was happening to their husbands and why they died that day. So that's really what got me looking into it. And but it wasn't until 5 elections later when I ran in 2008 for the NDP. In 2004, National Party 93, from 97, 2000, 2004, 2006, it was with Paul Hellyer and Connie Fogel for the Canadian Action Party. And during that time, 2004, 2006, part of our platform was actually asking for an independent investigation into 9/11 Truth because of its effects on Canada. We lost 24 Canadians, and a lot of our laws and legislation was changed due to what happened on 9/11. So we were asking for an independent investigation, no problem, because I was ignored, I was a small candidate. But in 2008, the NDP approached me, and they'd been after me for over a year to run for them. I had been asked by the Greens, so I had a decision to make. I chose to go with the NDP, because the constituents said, look, we want you in Ottawa, you have to go mainstream. So I chose to run under Jack Layton for 2008, and 2 days into the election campaign was when I was smeared coast to coast for standing for 9/11 Truth. And so I made it to the web page of Stephen Harper's election campaign, demanding that Jack get rid of me, and I made it to the website of Stéphane Dion, demanding Jack get rid of me. And the Liberal Party just dumped Leslie Hughes, sadly, as a candidate for questioning 9/11 at the same time. So the media was just ferocious on both of us.
Probably no one expected 9/11 would be an issue in this campaign, but tonight the Liberals are down a candidate after firing Leslie Hughes for her writings about the attack. That got our reality check team wondering if Hughes was alone in her theories or whether any other candidates have mused about similar theories. The answer from Terry Malefsky.
It could not have been anything other than controlled demolition.
Meet Barry Zwicker, friend and supporter of Jack Layton.
Mountains of evidence indicate that the events of 9/11 had to be planned inside the United States because 19 alleged crazed Muslim hijackers could not have neutralized the U.S. Air Force.
Zwicker is well known among so-called 9/11 truthers. In books and videos, these truthers claim the attack on the Twin Towers was an inside job by the U.S. or Israel or both.
9/11 was a false flag operation.
Jack Layton says he's known Zwicker for years.
So I certainly knew him from then. He was a friendly guy.
Do you endorse his theories about 9/11?
No.
But earlier this year, Layton told a 9/11 truther that Zwicker was a good friend and that he was studying his theories.
Oh, sure. Barry is a good friend of mine, and Barry Zwicker, and I have all of the materials, which we study, and naturally, it's a movement that is growing.
But one of Layton's candidates goes further. Bev Collins, running in Caribou, Prince George. In a radio interview last year, she suggested 9/11 was designed to justify the U.S. war on terror.
People are truly waking up, realizing who the people are responsible. That there was complicity for 9/11, that the people used that 9/11 to bring about a war on terror.
Today, in an email, Collins insisted that she never said the U.S. was complicit and that she's always held 9/11 was an act of terrorism. But her friend Barry Zwicker told a different story. He said that she still agrees with him.
But yes, in general...
She doesn't think it was just a terrorist attack.
Exactly. I think that's fair.
You've spoken to her today about that.
I have.
Jack Layton is standing by Collins.
She has acknowledged that the attack was a terrorist attack, and she hasn't made any attacks against any particular group or element of our society, and I'm satisfied with that.
In last year's radio interview, though, Bev Collins agreed with the host's theory that the U.S. might pull off another terrorist attack to justify a war, saying, yes, your concerns are our concerns.
I left party politics after that. It was realizing why were they so scared of me asking for an independent investigation. So when I left party politics, I thought I'm going to investigate this further, because why would they go to such a kerfuffle to keep this quiet and not want it to be a topic talked about in politics? Because the 9/11 issue affected so much of our political realm. So it was by researching it further that I got to meet David Long with 9/11 Justice Canada, and got to meet Richard Gage and whatever, and then started up my own 9/11 Talks radio show, and it's been 9/11 Truth since that point.
So Jack Layton was no stranger to 9/11 Truth, and now we're trying to bring this message into politics more. So you tried it with Canadian Action Party. How can we do this now, or what is the approach today?
Well, we have been trying. We've continued to try since that time. They've ignored us. They've said we're not interested. But just this December, we were able to get our petition, our 9/11 petition, into Parliament. And there was a press conference with David Long, Graham McQueen, Professor Graham McQueen, and Representative William Binney, I believe, for Architects and Engineers. And they helped present it to Elizabeth May, who was willing to at least submit it to Parliament. She didn't support it, but she was willing to submit it, because we had tried through Paul Dewar at the NDP for a lot of years, and he didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, which is really unfortunate, because I was hoping the NDP would take a look at it. They're not willing to.
So what kind of means can we get to get them to look at it? I mean, I know with Paul Dewar, petitions were often put in his face. I don't know if it ended up working. What other kind of tactics can we do?
Well, what we've done just now, David Long and Graham have actually worked on a new petition that has a lot more information in it, which is they're going to have to answer to at one point or another. We're hoping that there's one MP that might be willing to submit it, but what we've done this time is we're setting up a conference in Ottawa for June the 4th. And Richard Gage will be back from his European tour and his American tour by then. And he'll be there, as well as Graham McQueen. And I think they'll have Niels Harrit, Dr. Niels Harrit, via teleconference. And they're going to be meeting with a number of politicians and actually doing a conference in Ottawa, inviting all the different politicians to it. So we're hoping to try and raise more awareness. It's the families from the U.S. that are asking us to do this. They really feel that Canada could be the country that makes a difference. Because although there's many more Americans that have woken up, the chance of them getting their politicians to do anything about this is pretty small. So they really are hoping that Canada can make breakthroughs for both of us.
Perhaps, do you think maybe it would be more fair of an investigation if it was held in Canada or by Canadians?
Yeah. Yes, as a matter of fact, there's a global community now that's looking at holding a global conference. And they said, okay, where can we hold it? And at first they thought maybe Texas or something. And thought, no, that's not going to work. So they're actually suggesting Canada to hold a global conference for 9/11. The truth.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, when we held the Toronto hearings on 9/11, that was a fantastic event. It ran for 4 days, distinguished panel, a lot of great guest speakers, witnesses, architects, engineers, laid it out. It was incredible amount of information. Are those the sorts of things we're going to be seeing more of coming from this party?
I hope so. I know that we're looking at doing more hearings, at least bringing out the evidence. For example, the Consensus 9/11 panel is a phenomenal panel of world experts, 24 experts, who follow the consensus-based model in order to achieve their points that they agree upon. So there's 44 points that these experts have agreed upon that have happened on 9/11. So I think it's a matter of educating people.
Yeah.
But I think there's more awareness, and they're not calling us conspiracy theorists all the time now. But it's still a matter of educating people step by step, and whether that will be done for this election or not, who knows.
There still may be a lot of people who don't understand why would Canadians even care. I mean, some Canadians died there. Some people, for the people out there wondering, why are you guys so concerned with this? What would you say?
Because what happened shortly after 9/11 is our government brought in anti-terrorist legislation back then, which was C-36, C-42, and then 7. And each one of those particular pieces of legislation eroded more of our rights and freedoms. And it was always directly connected to what happened in the States in the 9/11. We also saw illegal wars take place that we've now sadly become part of, all because of the lies of 9/11 that we're told. Canadians believed what they were told by the American media, that it was, these people in a cave and all these Muslim terrorists, etc. But over time, people are realizing that's not the case. They're realizing that they were lied about the Iraq War and Afghanistan War. But Canada has been drawn into those illegal wars. And as you can see even now, we're dealing with a C-51, which is just the added extension of more anti-terrorist legislation to erode our rights and freedoms even more. So it directly affects actually almost every particular issue in Canadian politics. And that's why it's so upsetting for people to not realize how important this issue is.
Yeah, I guess
how it was run.
Exactly. It comes down to showing, I guess, people how they are being directly affected. Maybe with things like Bill C-51 now encroaching on people's homes, freedoms right in their very own homes, they can start to see where this is heading, but they have to understand where it all came from. And 9/11 truth is key to getting this out there. So for people who are watching this right now and are blown away to hear the fact that this is going to be getting introduced into Canadian politics, how can they get involved? Where can they go to learn more from you and to get involved in this movement?
I think one of the best organizations that they can connect with is rethink911.ca. That's based out of Ottawa, and it's a combination of different groups, 9/11 Truth groups in Canada. So they're willing to assist anyone who's willing to run in this coming election as an independent candidate for 9/11 Truth. And what they're willing to do is we'll have web pages on the website. We're going to see a lot of international support. The Americans are very happy that we're doing this. And there was actually an independent candidate in the States last year that ran for Congress on 9/11 Truth. And he was the first one. But he made such a great headway that it's become more of an inspiration for us to attempt to do that as well here.
Right. Well, as more and more time goes on, I mean, more and more evidence comes out that shows that this is not exactly how the government is being portraying it. So it's of the utmost importance that we get this information out now while we still can. So getting involved in any way, shape, or form, even in politics. I mean, some people might wonder, isn't this, getting in bed with the enemy? Aren't these the guys? Aren't the government the problem? Isn't the state the ones we should be worried about? Aren't we now prompting that up? What would you say to the people who are nervous of getting involved with the government to that extent?
I actually think people need to participate now more than ever because the government has become corrupted. And when you have a corrupt government, if you don't have the people that are willing to take a stand for it, we're going to slowly fall into total tyranny. And that's not what Canada's about. And when you start talking to Canadian people and just laying out the different issues regarding 9/11, they go, well, that makes sense. Oh yeah, I hadn't heard that before. And they do take a bit more of an interest. They just don't see the connection between 9/11 and party politics or the government politics. And that's something that we really want to try and work on this year, to let people know that it's so essential to be part of that so that we can turf out the existing parties that don't want to talk about this issue.
Yeah, exactly, because more and more are shying away from it, and as time goes on, it's going to get harder and harder. So now is the time to continue with the push for this. So Bev, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us. Is there a website where people can go to learn more from you?
I do have a website called the Bev Collins Show, because I have a radio show called the Bev Collins Show. So they're welcome to go on there, and it would have all the archives of my 9/11 talk show as well. So please do.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.